are now joining Children of the Watch.
That's right. It's the #1 podcast in the galaxy for all things Star Wars television. I'm your host, Alex Maxwell, and joining me as always is
Mac Lacey. Alex, we've been waiting for this day for so long. Years at this point, really. But Chapter 1, Book of Boba Fett, it's out. This is our scene-by-scene breakdown official recap episode. So we are officially in full swing Book of Boba Fett season.
Finally, it has been over a year now since The Mandalorian Season 2 has ended, and now we're here. Like, I know we had the Bad Batch in the waiting in-between part, but man, it feels so good to have live-action Star Wars television back on. And in case you missed it, we were formerly The Mandalorian Watch when we covered Season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian, and now we have switched our name to Children of the Watch to better cover all the live action Star Wars television shows that are coming this year. I'm counting, basically, we're in 2022, right? I mean, we're getting the rest of the Book of Boba Fett, and then we're getting Obi-Wan Kenobi, and we're getting Andor, Season 3 of The Mandalorian. All of it's coming, and we're going to be here to cover it. And so this is really, really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. This is kind of our first official step outside of the Mandalorian Watch territory. This is really where we're first getting good use out of this new name and everything like that. So definitely an exciting, momentous occasion. I think what we should do up top is just get right into it. Let's just give our general thoughts on Chapter 1 of the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, okay. So initially when I first watched it, I was like, huh. Now, it wasn't a bad it was a I did not expect it to go in that direction at all for the first episode.
Right.
I really enjoyed this first episode. I really, really did. But it didn't blow me away. Now, I will say, I've seen like already some discourse online and stuff of like, you've got some people who absolutely love it, and then you've got some people who didn't really enjoy it that much. I would say I really enjoyed it a lot more on the second watch. So if you're like listening to the podcast and you're wondering like, do I like this? Did I like it? Give it some time if you haven't already and watch it again, because I think you're going to really enjoy it after watching it a second time.
Yeah. I'm kind of in a similar boat as you. I really enjoyed watching this episode. I mean, my biggest takeaway was just it's really awesome to have new live action Star Wars content. It was great to be excited about it last night, to wake up early this morning and watch it as soon as I could, and all of that feeling like it was all what I needed. As far as the actual episode goes, I thought it was great. I had a lot of fun. But like you said, I wasn't just blown away or super taken aback by anything. And that's okay. This is a foundational episode. I think we're kind of setting the groundwork for what the eventual, actually meat of the story is going to be. So I'm excited to see where we go from here.
Yeah. And I think part of it too is like, we've had over a year to wait for this show. And theorize and speculate on what it could be. So like you really start to build it up in your head, right? And so like I think it's very important approaching anything that you love so much, even like Star Wars, with kind of open hands of like, let it be what it's supposed to be instead of what you've built it up in your head to be.
Right.
And so like on the second watch, I think I was able to do that of, this is what it was meant to be, not necessarily what I thought it would be in my head. And so I'm really excited to see where it goes from here. But like you said, nothing really blew me away in the first episode, but there's so much to talk about. And I can't wait to do this scene by scene breakdown, because there's a lot of hidden clues and details that we'll talk about in this, that I think that there's potential, some things of maybe instead of Baby Yoda, we've got Tusken Kid in this show. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. But before we get into the scene by scene breakdown and everything, we should probably do some business.
Yeah.
First of all, follow us on all the socials. At COT Watch is on Twitter. That's kind of where we're most active and everything. Engage with us over there. Also, we have a Patreon. That's the best way to support the show, and you get some bonus content. We'll be doing some bonus voicemail episodes and stuff like that while we're in season. Out of season, we do special commentary episodes and stuff like that. So a lot of fun. We got a nice active Discord community. If you're interested in engaging with our show more, definitely check that out. It's the best way to directly support us.
Yeah. And then, of course, you can, on Apple Podcasts and Spotify now, give us a 5-star review. That really helps people see our podcast and get out there. And, of course, word of mouth helps too. So tell all your friends and family. We are a podcast for everybody, whether you're a hardcore Star Wars fan or you have no idea what anything is. We try to make it accessible to you on all levels. So without further ado, I think we should just jump into our breakdown. What do you think?
Let's do it.
All right, so here we go. The Book of Boba Fett. Chapter 1 is called Stranger in a Strange Land, and the title description on Disney Plus says Boba Fett holds court. That's
very minimal.
I mean, and when you think about it, that's pretty much what happens in the episode. He does just hold court.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that is an apt description, for sure.
So the director is Robert Rodriguez, who, if you're not familiar, he directed The Tragedy in season 2 of The Mandalorian, where we were really reintroduced to Boba Fett in all his glory. And then the writer was Jon Favreau.
Yeah. It's cool, I think the kind of the reunion of this creative team is a good one. Like I think everybody, it appears, enjoyed working together. And they haven't made a flop yet. So
right. All right, so let's jump into it. We begin with the Lucasfilm logo and an updated helmet intro. Did you notice that, Mac?
I did. Still aren't taking our timeline idea, but that's all right.
Yeah, the timeline idea is not caught on yet, but I'm still hopeful. It now includes Fennec's helmet and Boba's, and then we fade into a panoramic view of Tatooine with the twin suns hanging in the background. And we see Jabba's old palace. And we're fading in and out as we switch inside the palace to see an empty hallway. And then we are in the throne room and it's vacant. There's nobody on the throne.
Yeah. These little atmospheric shots were an interesting choice to start this off to me. I really don't know what quite to make of it. It seemed kind of intentional and poignant. I think maybe if we, on our rewatch of the entire season after we've seen the thing, those shots might have new meaning to us. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, that's something I want to talk about. I think when we're totally finished with the breakdown is like, don't take this as just, okay, here's part 1. Take it as a whole, and then let's judge it all based off that.
Yeah.
So the music is a little ominous here as we go to a place we've never seen on screen before, and it's the upper chamber in the palace. And we begin to close in on a machine as drapes billow behind it, and it's a bacta tank with Boba Fett's body inside. And with a flash of light, we are flashed back to Kamino, Boba's original home. And the last time we saw this planet in live action was Attack of the Clones. And it was just incredible to see. Like, that was really cool to see from the get-go.
Yes, and that seemed intentional to me as well, since we've just come through the Bad Batch, and we've kind of been centered, and our attention has been focused on Kamino for the last little bit. So I wonder what kind of new discoveries maybe about the clones' home world that this show has in store for us.
So yeah, that's a question I was going to ask you is, okay, so the flashbacks in this episode seem very centric on what immediately happened after the Sarlacc, right?
Right.
Do you think we'll go further back in terms of his time on Kamino or any other flashback periods of his life?
Yes, I think this is just the very surface of all the flashback material we're going to get. It seems like basically anytime he's going into the bacta tank, we're going to get some more stuff. Because, in the episode, mid-episode, he had to kind of make a hasty retreat back. And we got more flashback material in that moment. So I think we're going to be getting a lot of flashes back to different points in his life. I think there's a massive chunk, still missing, obviously, from post Sarlacc before Mandalorian, and we'll get caught up on that. I feel like piece by piece. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw different areas of his life that we haven't explored yet.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that, and I'm hopeful for that, especially with like these are new scenes, right? Like we've never actually seen Kamino in that scene that way before, so they recreated that. That wasn't like reused footage from Attack of the Clones, where we see Slave One on a landing pad, and then we're back in the bacta tank, and Boba twitches inside, giving us the indication of what we are seeing is his dreams and his memories. And Boba is flashback to Geonosis inside the arena, again from Attack of the Clones, where he witnessed his father murdered by Mace Windu. Now, this is a bit of a recreation here. We see young Boba retrieve the helmet of Jango, and in a new angle, we see his reflection in the T-shaped visor. That is not an Attack of the Clones.
Right. That's new. They did use some stuff from Attack of the Clones to kind of frame that, but that was a new shot. I noticed that as well. And it looked like whoever was playing, young Boba looked, pretty on point.
Yeah, he looked exactly like Daniel Logan.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in the visor it was like him from Attack of the Clones, but like the kid standing in for him did a really good job looking like him. So that was really cool to see Jango's helmet. I don't know about you, Mac, but does it seem like the T-shaped visor is bigger? It seems bigger to me.
Yeah. Sometimes Mandalorian helmets seem wider at the bottom than they are. It might just be all a trick of like different focal lengths of lenses and that kind of thing. But there's points definitely where it seems like the Fett's helmets in particular like flare out more at the bottom than at other times. So
yeah, okay. I was just wondering if it was just me or anybody else saw that. Okay.
No, I've and it hasn't been just here either. It's in like other various points, even in the saga.
Right. So from the Geonosis arena, where we see Boba holding Jango's helmet, then boom, we're back in the bacta tank as Boba squeezes his eyes tighter in an anguished expression, and we jump back into the memories, and then we're inside the Sarlacc, and you basically called it. You had said on the podcast leading up to this that we would probably just start off with the Sarlacc, inside the Sarlacc, and that's what happens. It's pretty disgusting in there, Mac.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I think the Sarlacc is not nearly the most interesting or the most mysterious point of this story yet, but it was kind of the thing that everybody had at front of mind, because the last time we saw him before the Mandalorian was going in. And so I do think it's good that we just went ahead and solved that mystery. Don't have to worry about it. Watch the process. Happened very similar. If you've ever heard Patton Oswalt's pitch, in what
Parks
show
and Rec.
is that? Yeah, Parks and Rec. Okay, I was like it was either that or Community. Couldn't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, it pretty much happened very similarly to that. You had the gauntleted hand of Boba Fett busting out of the sand.
Yeah, it was cool. Like, I know that's something that everybody wanted to see was Boba Fett. How did he get out of the Sarlacc? To me, it was like, I didn't care as much how he did it. We just know that he did.
Right.
But it was cool to see, okay, what's that process? So in case you're like, okay, I'm confused on now where the flashbacks are. Well, now the flashback is immediately after Return of the Jedi, or during it, really, like when Luke is with a dying Yoda. That's probably when this Sarlacc stuff is happening, because I can't imagine he was in there for very long, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, if he was, I feel like there'd be even more damage, like his armor and stuff.
Right.
And
Right.
I wonder when the stormtrooper he finds went in there too.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask you is like, where did that stormtrooper come from? Because that stormtrooper is totally dead, by the way, and there was no stormtrooper in the sail barge scene from Return of the Jedi.
It's from a different point in time. Maybe Jabba had a unfavorable dealing with the Empire at some point, and some messengers, took the brunt of his wrath. I don't know.
So my mind immediately went to episode 4 when they're searching for the droids. Like, what if one of the stormtroopers just fell in?
Yeah,
and that's just him still in there.
What a terrible fate! You get posted on Tatooine, which has got to be one of the worst places to get to get posted.
Oh, it'd be the worst.
And then on top of that, you fall into a desert worm monster.
And like he is like attached to the entrails. It is disgusting in there. I mean, it is slimy. It is gross. And Boba, he's gasping for breath as he looks for a way out. He brings down his viewfinder and turns on a flashlight. And that's where we see the stormtrooper attached to the walls of the entrails, and he's dead. And Boba makes his way towards the trooper and rips out the trooper's oxygen and sticks it in his own helmet to breathe. And then he punches through the wall of grossness and ignites his flamethrower. And then we see the destroyed sail barge of Jabba the Hutt. And like I said, in case you forgot, this was destroyed in Return of the Jedi. And that's how Boba found his way inside of the Sarlacc. So this places the flashback not long after those events. And like I said, probably when Luke is with Yoda in Return of the Jedi. And so a fist bursts out through the sand and Boba digs himself out of the pit. And Mac, I think that's a big theme of this episode. Digging.
Yes. And so every digging shows up, and it's always Boba having to overcome something. And it's always by his own strength and his own devices, if that makes sense. So like we'd speculated different things that would be possible for him getting out of the Sarlacc. Ultimately, ended up he just woke up and fought his way out, And
Yeah.
and I think that's telling for how the show is going to go and kind of some themes of the show. It's Boba trying to become self-reliant and everything like that, but it's I think we'll get into with the leadership stuff that's coming later. I think those are going to maybe be at odds. And so just even from kind of the get-go here, that, like you said, that imagery of digging or kind of the Jonah metaphor coming out of the whale type thing, I think that's going to play centrally in this show.
So, okay, did you hear anything when he was digging himself out? Did you hear anything?
I mean, like,
just besides the grunting.
Yeah, I was about to say grunting though.
Okay, so an interesting note, as he's coming out, the subtitle says, "I can't."
Huh? Yeah, I didn't watch with subs on, so that's.
I didn't hear it though. Like even like watching it with the subtitles and listening with my headphones, I didn't hear him say that, but the subtitle says that he says that. So that's interesting. Yeah. So maybe if you're listening, you can hear that and call into the voicemail hotline and let us know if you heard that or not, because that would be super helpful. So Boba crawls on all fours. He peers through his T-visor at the twin suns, and the music is just incredible here.
Yes.
I mean, Ludwig has outdone himself with this one.
Yeah. And I mean, it's throughout the whole episode. We're going to talk about it a bunch, but yeah, it perfectly encapsulates this world, because like this section of the galaxy is familiar to us. So there's like a certain amount of familiarity the music also has to display, but it's an entirely new story focused on a character that's never been a main protagonist before. So it's really cool the new flavors and sounds he's bringing in as well.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like Viking like in some spots.
Yeah, he there's a lot of particular influences that come into this episode's scores. There's at a lot of places there's a lot of Latin influence, with like some like classical guitar type stuff going on, that's really interesting and really texturally fitting, I think. And then there's that kind of that big epic, almost tribal sounding thing that Ludwig has done so well with The Mandalorian, and here it's similar, but it's new and fresh as well.
Yeah. I think it's incredible. I think it's great. So he's on all fours. He has no strength left, and he just passes out. And then we're at night, and the sandcrawler approaches the wreckage. Jawas quickly begin stripping Boba of his father's armor. And these are some brave Jawas. Like, I would not do this at all.
They do get in and get out, though. It's a quick operation.
They've done this before. They've come upon dead bodies before and absolutely stripped them bare. So it makes sense now, like, understanding why Din hates Jawas so much in Chapter 2 of The Mandalorian, because it's like, these guys don't care at all. Yeah. They don't care if you're alive or dead. They're stripping your body for whatever it's worth.
Yeah.
So sure. Boba wakes up, he grabs one of the Jawas' cloaks, and they knock him out, and they leave him there to die. And now in the daytime, a sandstorm rages as 4 Tusken Raiders approach Boba's broken body. And from the get-go, we get a sense that these Tuskens are different. They wear darker colors. Did you notice that? Like, these are different Tuskens.
They're at least different from what we've seen. What it almost looks like was like he got found by, and we still don't know anything really about how Tusken society is actually set up or operates, you know, so this is all just complete speculation, but it almost looked like it was, he was found by like a ruling group, or like almost like the Tusken aristocracy, if
yes,
such a thing exists.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the chieftain, I mean, that chieftain looks sick.
Right, and they're decked out and decorated in ways that we've never seen. So it could be that, you know, kind of the Tuskens we're familiar with are more of like a merchant class or something like that, who or a warrior class, scout, you know, that kind of thing. And then it looked like, and it could just be a particular village, and this is just a village we haven't seen before with a culture we haven't seen before, but. Yeah, all the Tusken stuff was really cool. Just learning that, there's obviously a chieftain and like a chieftainess or whatever.
Yeah. It was awesome. They look awesome. There's like a red motif with the dark as well that like makes it pop. I think that's really cool. Yeah. But these are definitely the coolest looking Tuskens we've ever seen.
Yeah, for sure.
So they examine his body. Boba straight up looks like Vader without his helmet on. Like he looks disgusting. He looks gross. And one of the Tuskens kneels down and holds a larva to his mouth and oozes out green goo into his mouth. That wakes him up, and they tie him to the back of a bantha as they march single file across the dunes. And they're forcing him to walk behind him like a prisoner. And it gets so bad that he eventually falls down under the heat of the twin suns and is dragged by the end of his rope. And we've never seen Boba Fett so broken.
No, he's always coming at like things from a position of strength and power. You know, we've never seen him like just from starting with the Jawas to several times with the Tuskens. I'm like, I was counting at least like 3 concussions he would have sustained during this episode.
Maybe that kind of explains his personality change too.
Maybe it might just be brain damage. I don't know.
Jeez. So yeah, they arrive to a Tusken encampment as a number of Tuskens surround him with their pet Massive. And then we cut to black, and the titles come up, and it's the Book of Boba Fett. And there's no dialogue yet still, Mac. It's all visual storytelling so far. And it's kind of an interesting choice, like you said, like to start off a show this way. Very different than The Mandalorian.
Yeah. Just this whole portion before the title really has a tone of its own. And then the rest of the episode has a different one in my view. It's the more atmospheric, a little more moody without that dialogue. And then, you know, we'll talk about what comes next, but there's to me a definite tonal shift for the back part. For sure.
So then we get the Chapter 1, Stranger in a Strange Land. Kind of interesting that they use a title like that's a real world illusion.
Yeah.
Not a Star Wars illusion. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then we cut back to the blazing suns in the sky, and a weathered Boba is tied to a wooden post. And then someone pokes Boba with the end of a stick. And then we're introduced to this Tusken child staring down at him. And this child wears red around its neck. Keep that in mind, because I think it's supposed to indicate like this child is like the son or daughter of the chieftain. I think that's what it indicates. And inside a Tusken emerges, and we've never seen a Tusken like this before, like we mentioned before. This is the chieftain, and he's wearing red as well. His mask is awesome. And like you said, Mac, before, he's very regal looking. Like he definitely looks kingly in terms of Tusken society.
Right.
And the other Tuskens surround Boba with their sticks, and the kid begins whacking Boba with its stick while the adults start beating him with their gaffy sticks. And it's clear that the child has not earned a gaffy stick yet, right?
Yeah. It has like a wooden imitation of one.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the chieftain's, what I assume is the chieftain's wife, joins him as they simply watch the Tuskens beat him up. And Boba looks up to see the chieftain hold a black melon. We saw these in The Mandalorian, in the first chapter of season 2. And it's how Tuskens get their water. And he drinks from the melon and then he turns away as another Tusken kicks him in the face and knocks him out. And then we're back in the bacta tank as Boba shakes, and then it's back into the flashback as Boba is still tied to the post at night. And sleeping in front of him is the Massif. And beside him is a Rodian captive. Boba tries to get out of the ropes, hoping the Massif doesn't notice, but it does. And it raises to all fours, and it slowly approaches Boba as the Rodian captive watches in terror.
Yeah. Boba makes an interesting choice here. And I think it says a lot about who he is as a person. And when the Tusken hound thing that's what I'm going to call it. It's just a Tusken dog thing. But at first when it's alerted, that would have been the time to like freeze and wait for its guard to go back down and then start, slowly. But Boba just keeps on going.
Boba straight up doesn't care about anything.
Right. He's just like, I'm just going to keep working my way out of here.
Boba has
that if it ever becomes a problem.
Boba has the most confident in the galaxy. Like, he is the most confident in himself. He knows himself. He doesn't care. He's going to knock that dog out, use its teeth to cut the rope. Like, he just knows he's going to do it. That is a good attribute, but it also can be a weakness though too. Like,
yeah. And I hope that, cause like in this episode, his confidence and everything is clearly displayed as a strength.
Right.
I think when he gets into the politics of what it takes to run a crime syndicate, he might have to grow a little bit to compensate in that area where that confidence would actually be a detriment.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And so the Massif leaps at Boba. He jukes and he knocks it on the head. He kind of pets it before he uses its teeth to cut his ropes. And again, like, we're getting a side of Boba that we've never really seen before, except in The Mandalorian. I think in our minds, we all had Boba pegged as this like ruthless killer and this like ruthless, aggressive, like Punisher type person.
Right.
And I don't think that's him. We're learning more layers to Boba, and like as we peel the layers back, that's not really who he appears to be.
Right. And I'm hoping that what we learn is that our current perception of Boba, kind of in the original trilogy era, and I mean, I think this version of Boba is even displayed in a lot of the comics and stuff that is canon. I hope that what we learn as an audience is that maybe our kind of understanding in Boba is sort of an illusion, maybe like it is in the galaxy.
Ooh.
So I think maybe
That's
we
deep.
might collectively learn that we've misunderstood Boba the whole time, like as he's intentionally been trying to foster his own reputation, if that makes sense.
Ooh, Mac. That's why you're on the podcast, Mac. You're amazing.
That's why you have me.
You are amazing. That's really good insight there. I like that. So after scanning the camp, he turns to the Rodian, and we get our first bit of real dialogue, and we're 9 minutes and 20 seconds into the show. Yeah. Like, this is the first time someone's actually speaking in the show, which is,
almost
like you said,
a third of the way into the episode.
That's such an interesting choice. I will say, I think it's probably, if I'm going to critique the show, I think that's not going to do you well with people who don't watch Star Wars as much as you and me.
Yeah.
right?
Right. The people who aren't just sold on the fact that it's Boba Fett on
Right.
screen already, you know?
Right.
Yeah, it may. It may not though. I mean,
It
I
might
think
not. Yeah.
there was a lot of strength in that decision to keep it quiet because
True.
that's also reflective of the character we've known. Like this is the most Boba has ever talked on screen ever. You know,
True.
I mean, we're
Yes.
used to him saying just a couple lines and that's
a
it.
great
So,
point.
So like tonally, it almost makes sense that's how they would get us, you know, back used to the character. If that, you know.
Absolutely. And that's a really good point. I didn't think about that. Like it's transitioning us, like what you just said, from what we knew of Boba to what we now know of Boba. And then maybe that's kind of serves as a transition there in that. So he finally says, Rodian, do you want me to cut your bonds? And again, I don't know if there's like a double layer of meaning there.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what Boba's come to do in the show. Like he's going to cut people's bonds.
Right. So I actually think this particular scene and exchange is foreshadowing for stuff that's going to happen later.
Ooh.
Because it's Boba somewhat altruistically, but also I think realizing that they'd be better off as a team of two than solo, you know, in this situation. So that, you know, there's, you know, it's not like he's completely doing this selflessly, but I think he genuinely seems interested in freeing the guy too, you know. And so I wonder if that's going to be foreshadowing for, in a larger scale, you know, Boba trying to help someone and then that person turning on them or you know, alerting the alarm, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good too. I like that. So the Rodian actually begins shouting. I guess this Rodian is just completely broken down by the Tusken Raiders. Like he is completely just, I'm their servant. Like whatever they say to do, I'm going to do it. And the Tusken kid then charges out with the stick and Boba disarms him. Now the audio description says him, but I'm not totally convinced yet. I've got a theory on this Tusken kid that I want to hit on when we're finished with this, because from what we've seen in the trailer, I think this Tusken kid is actually that somebody else. I'll save that for later, but I think this Tusken kid is going to actually end up being somebody else later in the current timeline.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's a crazy theory, but I feel it. I feel it in my heart.
Right. Well, I can't wait.
So Boba flees with the stick and the other Tuskens and the Massive chase him. And we focus in on the Tusken kid. And I feel like they're putting a lot of importance on this kid. Like I said at the beginning, this kid might be like the Grogu of the show. I don't know. Like the kid seems important, at least from the first 30 minutes of the show to me.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. I could see it going either way. I could see the kid never showing up ever again. Or, you know, coming back. Either way at this point in my mind.
Yeah, so Boba is caught by the Tusken dog, and he fights it back with the stick as the other Tuskens stop to watch, and then the chief wraps his gaffy in the sand, and the Massive obeys, turning back to the Tuskens. Then the chief nods to one of his warriors, and I assume this is his wife or whatever Tuskens do in their culture, and the warrior steps forward with the gaffy stick, and Boba sizes her up and then attacks first, and he is in no condition to beat her. She just totally owns him and knocks him out, and the other Tuskens step forward, encircling him once again.
Receives what I think is the third concussion of the episode.
This is concussion number 3 for Boba. Yeah. Not looking good for his brain.
Yeah. No, she definitely seems kind of like almost the the chosen warrior of her tribe or whatever. Because she's or like the champion of her tribe maybe. But steps out and just trounces Boba. Like I wonder if maybe they might show up in the context of like Boba respecting how well they fight and recruiting them in some way.
So maybe the Tuskens come back in the current timeline and he recruits them for something.
Yeah, something along those lines.
That'd be cool. So yeah, as he's looking up at the shrouded faces, the screen turns greenish as he begins to wake up in present day. And the present day is right after The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
which is about 5 to 6 years after Return of the Jedi. So what we're seeing in the flashbacks with the Tuskens is right after Return of the Jedi. Now this is about 5 to 6 years later in the present day. So he's back in the bacta tank, and we hear Fennec telling him to wake up. And Boba drains the bacta bath, and he looks so much better because of the bacta. He has eyebrows now, which is great.
Yeah.
Right? Being
Helps
bald
with
without
expression.
eyebrows, that stinks. So yeah, it helps with expression. So Boba's looking good. He's looking less scars.
Yeah.
And he sits up as a droid comes to him and hands him a robe, and he announces that the dreams are back.
Yep. Which is why I'm kind of thinking every time he goes into the bacta, we're gonna get a new flashback sequence.
So do you think this is a result of the bacta, like, or has he always suffered from dreams or something? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. That's an interesting question. I guess in the moment, I just assumed this was a new thing that he'd been having since out of the Sarlacc. But, we could learn that there's even back to like kind of his first big trauma of losing his father Jango, because that was the first flashback we saw. He could have been dealing with some stuff, since then.
Now, listen, when we get towards the end of the episode and we talk about Boba's health, then I think you have been spot on in your speculation leading up to the show. I think there's something going on with Boba, and it might have to do with his cloning.
Yeah.
Like the fact that he's a clone. I think you're on to something there, because something's just not totally right with him. And I think it has more to do with the Sarlacc, like you're saying. So Fennec gives him a knowing nod, and he lets him know that they're she lets him know that they're lined up to pay their respects. Boba stands to his feet and begins dressing in his armor, and Boba's looking fresh. He's looking good.
Yeah, fantastic armoring up sequence. I loved it.
Oh,
man.
yeah. I mean, he's looking good.
Tamora Morrison's in great shape for the show.
Yeah.
Like, it's great.
The dude's 60. He's looking good.
Yeah, for sure.
He's handed his helmet and he puts it on, transitioning us to Boba sitting back on the throne where we saw him last in the post-credit scene from Mandalorian Season 2, Chapter 16, The Rescue. And before him is an Aqualish, and he presents a chest of credits and then hands it to one of Jabba's old droids, 8D8, which I love this droid. He looks like a skeleton to me. I love this. He's the torture droid. He's the one torturing the other droids.
He's very scary. He was less scary in this lighting.
Yeah. So Boba asks Fennec what the Aqualish said, and she thinks it has something to do about friendship. And Boba says, we really need a protocol droid.
I think that was also foreshadowing. I wonder if that interaction is going to come back to bite him later, and he agreed to something that he didn't know he was agreeing to by taking the credits.
That would be funny. That would be really, really
Classic, like learning the ropes mistake type thing to throw in there.
Yeah. So okay, that's something to write down in our journal there if we're keeping notes. 8D8 announces Doc Strassi, leader of the Trandoshan family, protectors of the city center and its business territories. And then Boba says, as the Trandoshan is coming in, that's weird. I used to work for him.
Yeah.
And I'm getting a little bit of a Game of Thrones vibe from this whole scene.
Yeah. And I like it. I'm very ready to get more into like the politics and inner workings of the underworld.
Yeah, but okay, so this is where the word whimsical keeps coming to my mind. Like if I was to describe this show or this first episode in one word, it would be whimsical. And it's not a bad thing. That's not a bad like connotation to that. But it's just like this back and forth between Boba and Fennec is actually funny. And that's not what I was expecting at all.
Right. No, I think you're really onto something there. Like my biggest takeaway from this episode was just how different tonally it was. That before kind of the title sequence when everything's still sort of in silence, that is more of the vibe I was expecting from the whole thing. But the majority of the episode was like it had that whimsicality. There was almost like an absurdness to it at some point. And
Yes.
like you said, like I don't mean that in a negative way at all. I just mean that like there's a lighthearted touch that is on this whole thing that I was not expecting.
Yes.
But that is pleasantly surprising.
Yes, I agree. That's a great way to put it. Pleasantly surprising. So Doc Strassi presents Boba a pelt, and this Trandoshan looks more like Bosk, by the way.
Yeah.
In terms of the other Trandoshans we saw in The Mandalorian, and he calls him the new Daimyo, which kind of gives us a pseudo feudal Japan thing going on Tatooine.
Yeah.
Right. And then we get confirmation that Jabba's palace is next to Mos Espa.
Yep.
Which is crazy. And we'll talk about that when we get into Mos Espa. But
Yeah.
Doc Strassi says, may you never leave Mos Espa. And I kind of took that as a threat right away.
Absolutely.
And as he's walking away, Boba says, even when a Trandoshan pays you a compliment, it sounds like a threat.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So I'm excited to see where that goes. And then we get the next person to, and in air quotes, pay respect. And 8D8 announces Mok Shiaz, the mayor of Mos Espa and its surrounding plateaus. And a Twi'lek enters and corrects 8D8. He's actually the mayor's major domo. And then from this exchange, we start to understand that Boba isn't going to just rule right away like Jabba did. The major domo says that the mayor doesn't have a tribute for Boba. Instead, he asked for a tribute from Boba. Yep. And the major domo almost makes fun of them, like right to their faces. And he explains that the mayor extends his most heartfelt welcome and calls Fennec my lady. Like he's kind of like making fun of them right there in front of them.
Yeah. They don't take the bait though. Like that could have gone terribly for the major domo if this was like they say as much. If it was Jabba, like things would be happening very differently. But I love Boba doesn't really seem fazed by it. I think he understands what's going on, but he doesn't back down. And I think that's definitely sowing the seeds of future conflict.
Absolutely. And so Fennec is fed up with it and says that Jabba would have killed him. And Boba is annoyed, but he dismisses him. But the major domo refuses to leave until he receives the mayor's tribute. And Boba says, what? I'm the crime lord. He's supposed to pay me. And again, it's like giving you this new layer of Boba where he's not totally in control. He's not like the guy who knows everything in the room. He's got some things to learn here, right?
Yep.
And then Fennec asks if they should kill him, but Boba says probably doesn't want to. He says no because he probably doesn't want to start a war with the mayor just yet. Right? Like, and then Fennec then announces that the gift is that the major domo gets to live. And the major domo just gives a not so subtle threat that he's fine, and they both agree to keep an eye on him, and so he leaves. And 88 then brings 2 Gamorrean guards who serve both Jabba and Bib Fortuna, and then 8D8 can't wait to see them tortured. Like he's a little excited by that.
Yep.
Boba says he doesn't torture, but instead offers them a place by his side in exchange for their lives. And then they bow to him, and then we cut to Mos Espa. And again, you can see part of the city is above the crater, so I guess that's what we see in the Phantom Menace. That's Mos Espa is where Qui-Gon and Padme meet Anakin Skywalker when we first meet him in the Phantom Menace. Yeah. And so I guess the part that we see in the Phantom Menace is that part above the crater. And inside the crater, we just never saw that.
Right.
And one huge tower dominates the skyline, and Boba and Fennec and the guards march through the city. And Fennec explains that he's basically approaching this wrong. He should be carried in the streets like the Hutts, but Boba refuses. He wants to walk on his own 2 feet.
Yeah. I love that about Boba. I think the whole walking thing, like, they're setting him up to be just an extremely likable and respectable ruler from our perspective. Right. I think it will get him into trouble.
Yes.
And he'll have to lay down the law at some point and prove some points,
Yeah.
There'll have to be action that backs up his words in this episode at some point. But yeah, it's just very endearing to the character for
Absolutely.
us, I think.
Absolutely. And then Finnick says things would go a lot smoother if you accepted their ways. And then inside the building, they're approaching Max Rebo.
Yeah, I was so pumped.
He's playing. He's alive. He's well. All is right in the world.
Yeah, there was a very kind of Latin influence like take on the cantina music, from New Hope. So you love to see it. You love to see it.
Yeah, so Max Rebo is the blue little elephant alien that you see in Jabba's palace that is like playing the keys. And then, like you said, there's a Bith. They're strumming a guitar. I like this place. I would probably hang out here on Tatooine. Like if I was living on Tatooine, that's the place I would go. Yes. Even Boba is kind of like nodding his head when he comes in. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I did.
He's digging the vibe.
He said, "Business seems good," or whatever the line was. When
yeah.
I mean, this is I love this cantina scene. Like,
it's awesome.
Nothing super out of the ordinary or anything, but like for once, the inside of this place actually looks like I would want to like sit down.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And so we actually see a card table with the droid from Disney World. What's the ride? I can't think of it all of a sudden. The very first Disney ride, Star Wars ride.
Star Tours?
Star Tours, yeah. So it's that same type of droid. It's like Rex.
Yep.
But it's not Rex.
Right.
It's the same type. And then did you spot the drum droid? Like there's an astromech playing the drums. Did you spot that?
I did not. I'm going to have to go back and look at it.
Yeah, I thought it's like, okay, Mac is going to love that droid. It's
this
like
droid
literally
is just going to become my avatar. Like,
yeah.
I'm just going to live
he's just playing the drums
through this droid.
Yeah, in case you don't know, Mac is in a band and he plays drums.
Yeah.
So they're looking for Garsa Phip. And two scantily clad Twi'leks approach, asking if they can clean their helmets, and Finnick refuses at first, but then Boba says sure and throws the line back at Finnick about accepting their ways. And Boba immediately wants to talk business with Madame Fwip, and he lets her know that he's taken over Jabba and Bib's empire, and he assures her that her business will thrive under his leadership. And she doesn't seem too impressed, but plays the game. Like she doesn't say anything disrespectful, but I get the sense from her, she's like, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Kind of, she sees an opportunity where maybe she can get one over.
Yeah, but she's going to play the game for now. Like it's all politics. Like you don't immediately like, no, I'm not going to do this. You're going to wait and see and let it play out first.
Right.
And so
test the waters.
Yeah, so they're giving their helmets back, and Boba has credits in his, which I guess is his tribute from her, right?
Yeah, I thought that was an amazing touch.
Yeah, and we wondered from the trailer, like, why the heck would Boba be having, like, credits in his helmet? Is he begging for money or something? So it makes sense now to see, oh, this is the tribute money.
Right. Yeah, love it.
So they exit, and then we get the line about how Boba intends to rule differently than Jabba the Hutt did. He intends to rule with respect. And Finnick says, sometimes fear is a better way, but then they're interrupted by the parkour crew. That's what I'm calling these people. So these red assassins jump out from behind them. They activate a shield of energy around them. Boba tries to shoot a rocket at them, but it does no good.
And it knocks him and Finnick over.
That might be concussion number 4 for Boba.
Could be.
They continue to stab at them. They're cornered, but then one of the Gamorreans rushes forward and breaks the cage of shields around them, allowing them to finally fight them off. And they fight. And at one point, Boba is stabbed repeatedly with the electricity lances.
Yeah. It seemed like maybe his armor was diverting some of that energy. We saw like when Din opened his armor up, there was all that circuitry and stuff underneath that he was having to like resolder and stuff. I wonder if there's some kind of like energy dispersion system to where when you hit a Mandalorian breastplate or something, it disperses the energy so it doesn't hurt as much or something like that.
That'd be cool. Very handy for this situation, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's surrounded. He's getting stabbed several times. 3 of the assassins parkour out of their way out of the area.
Parkour.
Boba blows one of them up, and then Finnick is off to catch them, and Boba yells at her to take them alive. And they parkour across the rooftops. Parkour! And it's a really cool city. Like, to see that. I love the sweeping shots of the city here.
Yeah, and they built such a large set for that. Like a lot of it seemed, and I'm sure they were, filling it out with the volume and with some other CG stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, there were a lot of physical set pieces that they were crawling around on that seemed pretty big and expansive. So I was really impressed with that sequence just from a production value standpoint.
Hardcore parkour. It's really fun. So Finnick is able to cut them off and fights them. She kicks one of them off the roof and then holds one hostage with the plasma pike. Now, here's something really interesting that Jonah Marie, good friend of the podcast, she DM'd us this insight that she had, and I'm going to read it. So this is from her. I did not catch this, and this is why she's awesome. Okay, so she says, take a closer look at the assassin Finnick caught. If you take a closer look at his face, you can see what looks like tattoos peeking out from behind his mask. They give me a Sentis Vel kind of vibe. And if you don't know who Sentis Vel is, that's Boba Fett's daughter. Okay. Boba Fett married, or maybe Sentis Vel is the one he married. I kind of forget which one is which. But Sentis, basically, Boba Fett like had a kid with a Kafar, which is like Quinlan Vos. They look like humans, but they have these facial tattoos on their face in the Legends stuff. So that's not canon, okay? But in the Legends era, Boba had a child with a Kafar. So that's something to keep in mind. So they give me a Sentis Vel kind of vibe. So if he does have lines on his cheeks, he could be a Kafarian. And since we know Finnick brings that guy back to Boba's palace based on the trailer footage, they could unmask him and maybe Boba will recognize the markings. It could potentially bring some EU elements in, but this is all speculation, of course. So that is Jonah Marie. That is great speculation.
For sure. I mean, I love that poll and everything, making that connection. That's very interesting. Yeah, I'm very excited to see what they can ascertain about the assassin.
Yeah. And so then we cut to the Gamorreans carrying Boba back to the bacta tank as they rip off his armor. And so this is my question that I had earlier. Is something more going on with Boba here? Like, what's actually wrong with him? He seems way more hurt than he should be.
Yeah, and it seemed like an exertion thing. Like he was like
he couldn't breathe.
Right. It was like almost the symptoms of like heat stroke or something like that. I'm not saying that's what it is, but like it just seems like his body cannot be pushed as much as he's used to pushing it. So I mean, it definitely could just be part of the recovery process.
Sure.
But hopefully there's not something additional going on, like with his with the cloning stuff.
Yeah, to me, it just kind of feels like there's something more going on there that we don't know about. Like, maybe again, it could just be, like 5 years ago, you fell into a Sarlacc pit and you're supposed to die in those things. You're not supposed to crawl out. I don't know. It just something seemed off about that, about like he needs the bacta, like Vader needs bacta.
Right.
Almost. So he collapses into the tank, and as the bacta rushes over him, we are back in the flashback, and the Tusken kid steps into view. And the Tusken pokes Boba with his stick and then begins using the rope as a leash, urging Boba to follow him or her, even though the audio description says him. Still, I'm going to say we'll see. The Rodian has to follow too. And it's almost like they're playthings to this Tusken, right? It's like, come play with me. I'm bored. Yeah. And so they march across the desert and the Massive follows. And again, the music is really unique here, just incredible. And they finally see movement and black smoke in the distance. And on a ridge, they spy Nikto raiders terrorizing a home. And at first, I thought this was the Lars homestead at first, but it's not.
It's just similar, but yeah, I mean that was the first thought. I was like, "What are we doing here?" And then, oh, okay. I
Yeah.
was like, I thought
And
this had already burned at this point, but
right. And so they're stealing water from this moisture farmer, and a farmer crawls out while they graffiti a symbol on his wall, which looked like two kind of like J's back to back or L's back to back.
yeah, some
And
kind of it looked like
yeah, like a
Orobash,
gang.
but not like a familiar symbol.
Right. And then they beat the farmer, and Boba's clearly disgusted with this. And again, we're just peeling layers back of Boba. Like, I would assume before this that he wouldn't really care, but he does. He does
Right.
care. Like, this guy's getting beat up. He doesn't like that.
Yeah.
And they leave the farmer and then speed off on their chopper speeders. That's what the audio description described them as. And the Tusken kid waits until they're gone, and then they walk away.
Yeah. We took time out of the episode to do this for a reason, in my opinion. I think that maybe that gang is going to grow into a larger syndicate at some point, or maybe they're part of a larger syndicate that Boba's then going to have to deal with, or
I think we see them again from the trailer footage, and I think it's the group that he's beating up at Tashi Station, or what we think is Tashi Station in the trailer footage. I think that's what that group is, but I think you're right. Like, that symbol was important for later.
There's a reason we got shown that symbol twice in that manner at this point, where seemingly it was just a stopping point on their way to somewhere else, you know?
Right. And so they walk away. The Tusken then orders them to start digging for black melons. The Rodian immediately does it. And the Rodian is like finding them left and right. And Boba's having some trouble finding one. And then we're like cutting to later in the day, and the Tusken watches the Massive. And I kind of love this kid. Like, I love how like relaxed this Tusken is, just kind of like watching everything going on. And Boba finally finds one, and he drinks from it, and the Tusken swings his stick at him, and then Boba stops it. He explains he needs water, but the kid doesn't really care. And then we cut again. The kid is kind of like sleeping, lounge back with the dog. And Boba angrily tells the Rodian they could escape to Anchorhead, or he could strangle him with the chain. And the Rodian then starts to uncover something in the ground, and we actually see a huge forked talon. And then giant arms burst from the sand and grabs the Rodian, and it emerges from the sand looking like something from the 1980s Clash of the Titans.
To me, it just looked like Machamp, which is
from Pokemon.
From Pokemon, it's the final.
Oh my gosh,
version of Machamp, but like with the four arms and everything, just being
it totally
super
does.
buff.
I have no idea what this monster is. I don't know if we've actually ever seen this before in Legends or in canon. I thought for a second maybe this is like a baby crate dragon or something.
Right. I was like, okay, that's definitely something scaly. Like, what's gonna happen? I was not expecting a 6-armed jacked monster.
No,
which was
not at all.
Just one of those touches that I was like, okay, we're just like, all right.
But like the word whimsical again come to mind. Like, this is odd, but in a good way. Like, this is not what I thought.
Yeah, it's perfect Star Wars. It's this weird looking thing that just sprouts out of nowhere. We're, experiencing this galaxy far, far away. And we're having an adventure. This whole thing had a very like classic adventure film vibe, sort of that same tone that like the Indiana Jones films have, just sort of like, the fun comes from just the possibility of anything happening. And truly at this point, I think anything could happen.
Yeah, I'm glad you said Indiana Jones, because Boba he's a lot like Indiana Jones here in terms of like he gets beat up constantly, but he's going to win.
Right.
Like, that's an Indiana Jones
protagonist thing.
It's
very.
I do too.
So that is a concern I do have for this show, is differentiating Boba from Din. Because Din also had that going on in The Mandalorian a lot, and I am worried that the two characters are not going to be different enough. I'm worried that like there's some danger that they could both just kind of morph into the same
Interesting.
person, if that makes sense.
Well, that is interesting. It kind of makes me wonder if that's why they decided to make Boba a lot more talkative, because Din is not. So it's almost like they kind of switch places in the sense of
Yeah.
like what we originally thought Boba was like is what Din is like, and what,
Right.
Boba's talkative now.
And he's showing like he like obviously had concern for like the animal, like the hound thing's well-being. I refuse to say the real word.
Massive.
It's just mastiff without.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, there's like things that whereas Din seems extremely uncaring about anything other than kind of himself and the tribe, or his clan, until Grogu comes along. So it's
Right.
interesting. And I don't think I think I have faith that like Boba's character is going to come off great. I'm really kind of enjoying what they're doing with him right now. That's just one concern that potentially come up. I think is maybe them getting a little too similar.
Absolutely. And but okay, back to the strange monster thing. The audio description calls it a behemoth. It attacks the Rodian, and the Massive tries to stop it, but this thing punches it away, and Boba's held upside down by the chain, and the Tusken actually attacks the monster with the stick, stabbing it in the foot. And the monster knocks Boba away and then turns its attention to the Tusken child. And it's going for the child, and when Boba jumps on its back and with the chains, it chokes it out with the chains. And then Boba holds up the chain to the Tusken, and then we get the child holding the behemoth's head as they rush back into the camp.
Yeah.
The Tusken shows them all excitedly. Like, I love that the Tusken kid is just super pumped about the severed head.
Right. It almost seems like blah, 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 blah. It almost seems like that monster has been troubling this group of Tuskens for a while.
Yeah.
And like Boba has just solved a problem for them,
Yes. Yeah.
There's also this Herculean aspect, or like something like the Odyssey. Like it seems like Boba's having to go through a lot to kind of get home, and like this whole journey home story, it seems like something out of Greek mythology,
Yes. That's why like the Clash of the Titans thing came up in my mind.
Yeah.
Is like it reminded me of something from Greek mythology. So yeah, they're all looking at the severed head, and then Boba watches on, and the chieftain then offers Boba his own black melon and strides away, and Boba drinks the melon, and then we cut back to black, and Boba's new theme plays, and it's incredible, and then that's it. That's the end.
Yep. I love it. Yeah, I mean, so this episode, as far as like tonally and everything, I think on point. Like it surprised me in that regard. There wasn't anything in here that just really like took me aback or blew my mind or anything like that. But it's the first episode. This is
right
getting into the narrative. If anyone was disappointed with this, I'd just urge everybody to keep an open mind and kind of just allow yourself to actually go on the journey before we make any kind of judgments too quickly.
Yes.
But I mean, this episode did give me that feeling of a new Star Wars thing, and it was so exciting to watch. I had a very fun time watching it. And I think more than anything, this first episode just made me excited for the rest of the show, because I think we're really going to get into the meat of it going from here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you put that perfectly. Like, we cannot judge this show yet because we've only seen 30 minutes of it, really, because the credits are like 10 minutes. So like we've only seen a little bit of it. Yeah, it's a little slower start than what I was expecting. And again, we had a whole year to build this up in our minds, and we've waited for it for so long. So don't jump out yet. Like give it some time. Now, we'll say, like, if there's some critiques or whatever, it felt like a second episode of The Mandalorian to me than a first episode, like a Frog Lady episode, right?
Right. Yeah, I guess it seemed surface level to me.
Yes,
So
yes.
so like yeah, there's stuff happening, but I don't feel like we really, even though there was some kind of formational big stuff going on as far as getting out of the Sarlacc and everything like that, I really don't know that this show has delivered us a good insight into the internal workings of Boba's mind and character. So I'm looking to get a better feel for that. Like just watching the show or this episode, I couldn't tell you what the overall conflict of this show is going to be, right?
That I would say that's the biggest criticism from this episode is like I still don't really know where we're going with this.
Right. Like what are we doing? Like
Right.
and again, I'm sure we're going to get all this information filled in, but like what is Boba's end game? What's the goal? And how did he even get to this point? Like I don't think he just walked into Jabba's palace, like they shot Bib and then he just sat down and then this show started, right? There's some other stuff we're missing.
Surely. And that's the thing is like we gotta have to like maybe it is surface level. Maybe it is just like at the end of the day, he just wants to be in charge and that's all he wants. And there's really no motivation for him at all. I would be kind of disappointed if that is the direction they're going.
Right.
But I'm going to still enjoy it no matter what, because it's live action Star Wars television that we're getting. And it's, we haven't had it in a long time. And it's starting off just a whole year of awesome content that is coming our way. So like by the end of the Book of Boba Fett, you don't end up liking it as much as The Mandalorian, that's okay because you still got Obi-Wan coming and Andor and Ahsoka and The Mandalorian season 3, the Acolyte, all these different things are coming, so, but I'm very hopeful for the show, but like you said, we still don't really know where it's going, but it's time for some wild speculation because
all right, we've waited long enough. Let's hear it.
If you know us, if you know our podcast, that's what we like to do. Sometimes, I'm not going to lie, I'm not one to toot our own horn, but we nail it sometimes. And then there's other times.
You love to toot our own horn.
There's other times where we're completely off, just completely off. And this might be one of those times where I'm completely off on this. But that Tusken, there's two things that came to my mind. Number one is like the color scheme of that Tusken kid reminded me a lot of Omega, which was, it's basically Boba Fett's sister that we learned from the Bad Batch. I don't think that Tusken or anything has anything to do with Omega. That's just something that came to my mind is like, kind of reminded me the color scheme a little bit of the Tusken. The thing that is wild to me, wild speculation here. In the trailer, one of the most recent TV spots, we see a girl on a speeder bike.
Yep.
And she's wearing like a red, either it's like a gauntlet or something on her arm. There's a red motif on her arm that reminds me of Boba Fett. That also reminds me of these Tuskens. Okay. I think that girl is in the present day timeline. So that's 5-6 years after whatever this flashback is. Is it possible that kid is actually a human under there and it's this girl?
Yeah.
I don't know why my mind's going that way, but that's where my mind is going for some reason.
Yeah. Here's the thing: we don't know what Tusken's physiology is like.
Right?
They could be human, and then just wearing garb that's traditional or ritualistic or something like that. And I'm sure practically lets them live in the desert better. That's almost kind of what it seems like to me. Is like, the kid is already wearing like the wraps and then has the metal pieces on the face and everything. So they could just be humans under there just wearing equipment that's, just like Din and the Children of the Watch and the Mandalorian, like they just don't take those off. There's something cultural there going on, which could be an interesting, maybe that's why Din fell in with them and can speak their language and stuff. You never know. But
Well,
I mean, they also Tuskens could be a completely different species under there too.
true.
We just don't know.
And like that gives me an idea what you said about Din and the Children of the Watch. You know, Din's a foundling, and we know that this tribe in particular, they dress differently. Is it possible these Tuskens take people in and like almost like a foundling type thing, like the Mandalorians do? They kind of like raise you to be Tusken, accept you into the tribe, and then you're Tusken. It's something maybe is possibly going on. I don't know. We're getting a lot more Tusken stuff than I thought we would from this show.
I know. It is very Tusken centric, and the Mandalorian was even more Tusken centric than I expected, and this is even more so than that.
And it makes me like probably I'm glad that Obi-Wan Kenobi probably won't take place on Tatooine a whole bunch, because this is the type of stuff that I would expect from an Obi-Wan Kenobi show, is like his interactions with Tuskens and stuff like that.
Right.
And like the way that they interact with moisture farmers or stuff like that. I could see Obi-Wan dealing with this stuff, not Boba Fett. So it makes me think that the Obi-Wan Kenobi show is really going to have him off world doing something off Tatooine. And we're getting all this Tusken stuff with Boba Fett, and we're really exploring their culture. I really enjoy it, but the first time watching through, I was like, I kind of want to know what's happening in the present day. I want to know more what's happening with the present timeline instead of the Tuskens, but it was more enjoyable the second watch.
Yeah. I think the format of the show is going to continue in much of the same way that this one was. I think it'll be kind of split 50-50 between flashback, filling in those gaps, and then, the current day thing. I feel like I have a good idea of where the flashback stuff is going. I imagine that killing that monster, he's going to kind of get accepted into the Tusken tribe. They're going to kind of help him rehabilitate, some stuff like that. You can kind of see the progression there. The current day stuff, I have no idea what's going to happen there.
Right.
I think this was just an introduction to say Boba Fett is now doing this. These are this is kind of like his first day on the job, seemingly,
Yeah.
So in that regard, it's a blank sheet of paper. It could be whatever.
Yeah. Like you said, like, I feel like I know where the flashbacks are going with the Tuskens, right? Like,
right.
And it's also like important to keep in mind, we were talking about this on the Discord spoiler channel. That's still 5 years before where we're at in the present timeline. It's possible Boba was with the Tuskens for that whole time.
Right. I mean, when he shows up in The Mandalorian, he's wearing kind of that robe type thing.
He's got the gaffy stick.
And the gaffy stick.
The cycler rifle. Yeah.
Right.
It's like he maybe became a Tusken for a moment, until he gets tired of what's happening on Tatooine and realizes, I want to get back in the game and change the game. And maybe that's where we start from in terms of picking up where we left off. Now, It's interesting, that article from The Hollywood Reporter where Robert Rodriguez said the majority of the stuff we saw in the trailer was from the first 15 minutes of the show. He lied. That is not true.
I mean,
right?
So like we haven't seen the Ithorian yet.
Right.
I think most of the stuff we saw was from this episode. I mean,
except the newer stuff. Yeah, the newer TV spots show a lot more, I think.
Yeah, I guess I'm mainly focused on the trailer and like the earlier ones, but
the question is, what was he doing was he with the Tuskens for 5 years? And then how did he get hooked up with Fennec? Why was Fennec on Tatooine to begin with? She says that she, in chapter 5 of The Mandalorian, the Gunslinger, she was there to meet a contact at Mos Espa. Okay. And then somebody had a bounty out on her that Toro Calican, let's go, picked up on, right?
Yeah.
So was she there to meet Boba to begin with?
Good question. Or maybe she was there to finish Boba off to begin with.
I think that's a question that we need answering.
Yeah.
And I think we'll get that. I think what we've seen from the trailers and the TV spot, we do see Boba kind of like sneaking into Jabba's palace in the Tusken robes. So like, I think we will get that answer.
Yeah.
I think so. But yeah, in terms of where the present day storyline is going, I have no idea. But man, I hope we're in store for some surprises, because I think that's kind of what I was missing from the end of this episode. I was kind of hoping for a big stinger at the end, something to like, oh my gosh, now I'm hooked in. I just don't feel like there was anything when it was all said and done of like, oh, you got to stick around for the next episode.
Right. Yeah, that bait to kind of keep you on the hook.
Right.
I do think was missing. And just like right at the end would have been the perfect time to bring up what the actual conflict is going to be for the present day storyline.
Yeah.
Like, but I'm sure we're going to get there, like probably right in next week, So
right.
We're along for the ride. I'm looking forward to see what comes next. But yeah, if there was some criticism to be had of this episode, it's in that it just didn't have that stickiness I was looking for, I guess.
For sure. So we want to hear what you guys think, and we will be doing a voicemail hotline episode very soon before the next episode comes out. So you get this episode, a voicemail hotline episode, and then if you're part of the Patreon, you get a bonus voicemail hotline episode as well. So you got to call in for that to be successful, right? So call into the voicemail hotline, and that's 205-259-6675. 205-259-6675. Leave your voicemail under 3 minutes. If you mess up, just hang up and try again. We won't embarrass you. We won't play the one that you messed up on. We want to hear your thoughts and theories of what's going on in the Book of Boba Fett. And then just tell us what you thought about the episode as well. Where is this show going? What did you think? Did you love it? Did you not love it? That's okay. It's all on limits. Call in with your voicemail hotline theories and stuff, and you could make it onto the show. And I'm excited to do that. That's going to be a fun episode, just hearing from you guys. That's part of what makes this show, I think, so special, is hearing from you guys directly.
Yeah.
And we can't get everybody on a voicemail hotline show because there are a lot of calls that come in, but we try our best to get a lot of people in. So make sure you call in. And then we should probably mention Mac. You will be going out of town next week, right?
So I will not be on the recap next week. But I'm not, going anywhere. I'm just going to be out of internet reachability basically. So, but do you want to announce special co-host?
Yeah. So to fill in for Mac, Jonah Marie will be joining the show. She's been on our Bad Batch recaps in the summer. If you listen to those, she is just an awesome person. She has so much knowledge of Star Wars. She brings so much insight into our show. And so we love having her on. So she's going to be filling in for Mac, and we'll be doing the scene by scene breakdown together next week with Jonah Marie.
For sure. Yeah. She should probably just be, in my spot anyway. But yeah, she's got just a contagious enthusiasm, so she'll be definitely tune in next week to get her insights on everything. But yeah, until then, keep the watch.